The Gaza Strip crisis, what a mess. I really wanted to understand what was going on. I heard about peace negotiations, what's happening. So in this video, I want to share with you what I learned. We're going to cover the history of the region, what's been happening there for thousands of years, and we're going to look at the key players of the conflict. Who are the key players? What's their identity? What's their interest? And what is their influence in the region? The key players we're going to cover are the Palestinians. We're going to break that down into a few categories. You have the Palestinian people, you have a couple governments, you have the government of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip, and you have the government in the West Bank, the PLO. The next categories, we're going to look at Israel. That's also going to break down a couple categories. We're going to have the Israel people, the Jewish people inside of Israel, and the Jewish people all across the world. And we're going to look at the Israeli government. We're going to look at the United States. We'll also look at the neighboring countries. The list of the countries that we'll look at, a few of them are Qatar, Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Iran, and a few others, and really show you their perspective. And then lastly, we'll look at the UN representing all the rest of the countries who have an interest in this conflict and seeing a peace to the war. Now, a side note is that I am not perfect in all this information. I don't have the complete picture. So if I am missing something, if I am misconstruing information, please let me know. Put your recommendations or questions in the comments. I really want to learn more about the issue with you. Now let's jump into it. The history of this region begins 4,000 years ago with the Jewish people. According to the Jewish religion, the father of their faith, Abraham, comes into the land of Canaan, also known as Israel, and God meets with Abraham inside of this land, and God promises him and says, Abraham, I'll make a covenant with you and your children, and I'll give you this land, and it'll be yours and your grandkids and your great-grandkids forever. So Abraham makes a covenant. 1,000 years later, the Israelites are living inside of this land, and King Solomon makes the first temple to God. In 586 BC, the Babylonians come and take over Israel and Judea as what it was called, and they destroy this temple. Shortly after, the Persians come and take over the Babylonians, and then the Persians help rebuild and make the second temple to God. Skipping forward to 63 BC, the Romans came and they took over Israel, and they ruled Israel for hundreds of years. During this time, you had Jesus, the beginning of Christianity. You had a revolt from the Jewish people against the Roman government, and as a response, the Romans came and they sort of just kind of wiped out Jerusalem. They destroyed the second temple, and there was a crazy persecution that rose up against Christians and Jewish people. And what we have is the Jewish diaspora, or the fleeing of Jews to all over the world. As you know, right now there's Jews in pretty much every single continent, and that came really beginning during this time period. This was the time period when Rome first gave the name of Palestine to Israel. The Romans kept occupying Israel during this time period. Of course, Rome transformed into the Byzantine Empire, so they ruled Israel up until about the 600s AD, when Persia came, modern day Iran, and took hold of Jerusalem and pretty much wiped it out. In 610 AD, we have Muhammad comes in and begins the Islam religion. Of course, we know that he was mainly in Mecca, but according to the Quran and the Islam religion, Muhammad was taken by a winged creature from Mecca into Palestine at Al-Haram al-Sharif, and he was taken to this place, and there he ascended into heaven. So Palestine holds a big significance to the Muslim religion. In 637 AD, Muslims come from Arabia and take over Israel or Palestine, and it's over Muslim rule for hundreds of years. 800 years ago, Christians inside of Western Europe decided they wanted to protect holy sites that were holy to their religion, which a lot of these sites were inside of Israel, which was governed by the Muslims. So they began a long set of wars that were called the Crusades in year 1000 to about year 1200, so 200 years of wars. In the end, the Muslims won, and they continued to occupy, and really it was the Mamluks, these were Turkish descendants, and they governed this area for about 300 more years. In year 1517, the Ottoman Turks came and they defeated the Mamluks. Then they began what was called the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire lasted for a long time, from year 1517 to the year 1917. So for 400 years, the Ottoman Empire occupied this region. And I want to remind you, many of the Jews weren't in this region at this time. There were some Jews. There were probably more Arab Christians than Jews at this point. A lot of the Jews were spread all over the world. Mainly the biggest group in the region at this time were Muslim groups. Now coming into modern day, we had something interesting happen in the late 1800s. In the late 1800s in Eastern Europe, especially Russia, there was a lot of persecution against Jewish groups. And with that, a lot of Jews felt that they didn't have a good homeland. They started getting persecuted wherever they went, and there began this movement that we now call the Zionist movement. Now, many Jews for hundreds or thousands of years believed that one day God would bring them back to their homeland, but especially in the late 1800s, there began a movement of Zionism saying we are going to return back to our homeland. So what we saw is that many Jews began buying land or moving into Palestine during this time. Skipping forward to 1914, we have World War I. Now this is where everything is going to start changing and things are going to be moving really fast, and we're going to take our time a little bit. During this time period, we had a few things happen. So first of all, you had the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration is a promise from Great Britain, and it said, hey, to the Jewish people, we're going to help you put your homeland back inside of Palestine, which was ruled by Muslims at this time for about 400 years. We're going to help you get back here because of all the persecution you're facing in Eastern Europe and starting to spread into Western Europe. You also had World War I. In World War I, one of the people who were defeated was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, who'd been ruling for 400 years, and it basically disintegrated and wasn't a country after World War I. Also, you had the League of Nations begin. The League of Nations was the precursor to the United Nations, which we will get to here in a bit. But the League of Nations said, hey, Western countries, what are we going to do about the Ottoman Empire lands? What do we do? And they decided, whatever you think about it, they decided that they're going to divvy up all the land and make this country and that country. And in terms of Palestine, they kind of handed it over to Great Britain. And Great Britain said, hey, we're going to use the Balfour Declaration to help the Jews settle into the land of Palestine. At first, they were even going to give the Jewish people the land of Jordan, then they kind of changed that, but that's sort of what happened. As you can imagine, that didn't go exactly well. You had Muslims live here for about 400 years with Muslim rule. They didn't take it exactly peacefully, and then there were fights from the Jews and the Muslims, and it went back and forth. You can imagine what happened next. In 1939 begins World War II. At this point, anti-Semitism had spread greatly from Eastern Europe into Western Europe, and Jews felt very displaced and they were desperately seeking a homeland and didn't know where to go. You had the Holocaust happen, things like that. In 1945 was whenever World War II was over, and then you had the creation of the United Nations, sort of the 2.0 of League of Nations, and they also had this question of what do we do with the Jewish people and the land of the Palestinians. So in 1947, the United Nations came up with a plan of a two-state solution, basically with the Palestinian land, as you can see on this map. Part of it they gave to the Jews, part of it gave to the Palestinians. Basically, in the end, the Jews liked it and the Palestinians didn't like it. The Jews obviously would like it because they were giving this land that they hadn't had for thousands of years. And the Palestinians obviously didn't like it because they were occupying this land and they were saying, hey, you're not gonna have this land anymore. The Palestinians in the deal were given the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and Jews a lot of the other areas. Now, one more side note in this video, I'm not taking a side in this issue. We're gonna talk a lot about the issues and the conflicts that have been going on. You get to decide what you think is true. I'm just trying to show you what I have learned about the history. From this point, there's a lot of conflict between the Palestinians and the Jewish people. So on May 14th of 1948, big moment, the Jewish nation of Israel decides to officially declare itself as an independent state called Israel. This is a big deal. It basically leads immediately into a war between Israel, Egypt, Syria, Iran, Lebanon, Jordan. Like all these countries immediately get very upset and they begin fighting Israel. This is also called the Nakba, or the Israel War of Independence. From this conflict, 700,000 Arabs were either kicked out or they left the land of Israel. Now this is where there comes in a lot of conflict of interpretation. Many of the Palestinians say that they were kicked out. Many of the Jews say that they left on their own accord. I don't know. You have to research that a little more. In 1956, you had the Suez Canal crisis between Egypt and Israel. Basically, Nasser, the president of Egypt, gains influence with the Arab countries and becoming this big protagonist for the Palestinian movement. Israel maintains its land but doesn't get access to the Suez Canal, and Israel decides that they're going to begin creating nuclear weapons. In 1964, you had the beginning of the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's the current government in the West Bank right now, and it is the actual acknowledged representative of the Palestinian people inside of Israel. The big thing is that basically there were many groups before this who were against the Jewish movement inside of Israel, and the PLO helped unite a lot of these groups into creating one big organization. In 1967, we had the 6-Day War. Israel went ahead and preventively attacked Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. They claimed that they were about to be attacked, so they went ahead and attacked first, and they basically won in 6 days. In 6 days, they had gained parts of Egypt and parts of Syria. They had gained control over the West Bank, over the Gaza Strip. At this point, a lot of tension was rising between the Jewish communities and the Palestinian communities. A theme here is that it seems that with each event, the tensions kept rising higher and higher. In 1973, you had the War of Yom Kippur. Basically, Egypt and Syria wanted their land back from the 6 Days War, so they attacked Israel. It didn't work. Israel held them off. The US came in and kind of held them back. In 1978, Egypt was the first Arab state to officially recognize Israel as an actual state or country. At this point, again, tensions rose even more with this between the Palestinians and the Jewish communities inside of Israel. In 1987, you had the first Intifada. Intifada in Arabic means uprising. So the Palestinians began to uprise against who they felt the Jewish communities were oppressing them. So they began to attack the Israel government and the Israel law enforcement. Israel attacked back. Over the time, about 1,000 Palestinians were killed and about 160 Israelis were killed, and 20,000 Palestinians were arrested during this time period. The critical point during this time period was the group of Hamas came in. Now, Hamas was a terrorist organization that came in and gained influence in the Palestinian government during this time. They were a lot different than a lot of the other organizations that were around of the different liberation movements, because this was strictly a religious Islamist movement, meaning that they weren't really interested in having a Palestinian or Israel state mixed in with multiple religions. They wanted an area that was determined specifically by your religion. We wanted a state for Islam inside of Palestine or Israel. From 1993 to 1995, we have the Oslo Accords. Now, this time period was a time of hope for peace all over the world for this region. Many people felt that the Oslo Accords were a big factor in fixing this conflict. Israel agreed to recognize the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as its own thing and with its own rights, and the PLO said, we will recognize Israel and we'll have peace with the land of Israel. Now, from 1993 to 1995, they're trying to get this done. It basically just didn't get done. In the end, things happened and it never got finalized, and from there, tensions rose even higher after that. We had the second Intifada, the second uprising from the Palestinian groups to the Jewish government, and there was a lot of attackings and killings going on. About 4,300 people died in total during this time. In 2005, big things changed. Israel chose to bring all of its Jewish communities inside of the Gaza Strip and withdraw them from the Gaza Strip. At this time, it was mostly Muslims anyways, but they said, hey, we're going to completely leave the Gaza Strip and we will give the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian people. And the Palestinians decided to elect its own form of government in the Gaza Strip, and they elected, what do you know? Hamas. Hamas actually campaigned and won the election, basically, and took over the Gaza Strip. This didn't make a lot of the Western countries happy with a terrorist organization leading the group, so they basically made some demands and said, hey, we'll make peace with you, the Western countries in the US. We'll make peace with you if you'll recognize Israel as its own state and if you'll do these different things. Hamas basically said no. Saudi Arabia tried to get them to say yes, and Hamas continued to say no. And that's basically what happened. From 2005 to 2023, there's been a lot of tension between Hamas and the United States, between Hamas and Israel, between the Palestinian government in the West Bank, which we will get into, the PLO, and Israel, and that's basically where we're at. 2023, Hamas decides to launch an attack against Israel, breaches the wall of separation that was in Israel, and killed about 2,000 people. And then Israel said, hey, we're on a mission now to go into the Gaza Strip and take out Hamas and unseat them from authority. In the process, more than 60,000 people inside of the Gaza Strip have been killed, and about 1,000 IDF soldiers have been killed. And that's where we're at. That's the history. So now let's get into the key players of this issue in the negotiation and see if we can understand where each side's coming from. From the perspective of the Palestinian people, they feel that they've been living in this area for about 400 years with the Ottoman Empire. And a lot of their ancestors lived there, so they have a lot of heritage in this land. And they feel that after World War II, the Jews are basically pushed on them by the Western countries, and that they were given access to kick them off of their own land. And they feel that they've been misplaced and displaced and mistreated and abused by the Jewish people. I'm not even saying what they're saying is right. I'm really just trying to say this is what they're saying from their perspective. And they feel that they've been abused terribly by the Israeli government, that they've been killed during this Gaza conflict since 2023. And they want some sort of a two-state solution, or maybe that they want the whole thing, the river to the sea. They want the whole thing, or they want two-state solution. They want something. They want their own land. They want their own power. And they feel that they're maybe being too hampered down on by the Israeli government. From the perspective of Hamas, you have to understand Hamas a little bit. They're financed by Iran, and we'll get to that here in a second. But Hamas is strictly a terrorist organization, and it seeks to create an Islamist regime and seek to have this whole state being governed by Islam. And they've used terrorist tactics to get their job done for the last several decades. From the perspective of the PLO and the West Bank, in the West Bank, they feel like Israel is trying to take them over in the West Bank, and that they want to annex the West Bank into Israel. So they've also been very militant in terms of their relationship with Israel. And they also want some sort of a two-state solution where the Jewish has their state and the Palestinians has their state. From the perspective of the Jewish people all over the world and inside of Israel, they feel that they've been very persecuted from not just from inside their own nation, but all over the world. And they're being pushed out of countries. And you got the Holocaust and World War II, and you got the Eastern European persecution, anti-Semitism. And they say, hey, where are we going to go? And they feel like this is their homeland from thousands of years ago, and that they want a place where they can practice their religion safely and peacefully. From the perspective of the Israeli government, they say that they haven't been abusing the Palestinian people. They say that they haven't been displacing them, that Palestinians have the same and equal rights as Jewish citizens inside of the land of Israel. They also say that the Hamas government is a threat to the Israeli people because of the 2023 attack and because of many rockets that have been sent over. So they say their mission is to secure the safety of their own people, so that they have to take out Hamas in order to do that. From the perspective of the United States, they've been very involved with Israel since 1947. They've given Israel a lot of money and a lot of security guarantees, and they've gotten involved with certain conflicts. And the United States feels that Israel is a great ally. And they also say that they're a great deterrent for Iranian groups inside of the Middle East. And we're going to look at Iran. Iran's very interesting. We'll look at it in here in a bit. And side note, again, I am not saying that I'm for any of these groups. I am simply trying to show you from their perspective what each side is saying. This is what I'm for. This is what I want. So the United States says what it wants is it wants safety and security for the Jewish community and the Palestinian groups, and that it is interested. I mean, you have different parties in the United States. It is interested in a two-state solution between the Jewish and the Palestinians, but many groups in the United States don't think it's possible, don't think they can coexist. So there's a lot of different factions within the US, but as a whole, the government has continually been supportive of the government of Israel, especially in the last couple of years. Now we'll talk about the neighboring countries around Israel. And really, I really want to focus on one big subject. There's a lot of things you could go into, but I want to focus on Iran. Iran wants to be the biggest superpower basically in that whole Middle East region. And it's not really a border of Israel, but really it is, because Iran has been financing these proxy wars all around Israel. So Iran has been financing Hamas. It's been financing Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen. And a lot of these groups, it's using these groups as proxy wars to attack Israel. So especially in the last 2 years, where we've seen Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis come at Israel. Now with these neighboring countries around Israel, a lot of these are affected by Iran. So Iran's putting pressure on the Middle East, wanting to dominate. And a lot of these neighboring countries don't really want Iran to have dominating control. Think about Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. They would rather not Iran be this dominating force, because Iran could easily turn its weapons on them and take them out. So they don't want that to happen. They are also very sympathetic to the Palestinian people inside of the Gaza Strip. They feel they've been mistreated. They also have links with ethnicity and the Islam religion with the Palestinian people. So a lot of these groups have found themselves in the neutral zone. Egypt and Qatar have been meeting places for Hamas and Israel for them to come and meet and have ceasefire agreements on, but basically they really don't take a lot of sides, and really their big interest is they just want peace. They don't want to be wrapped up in a bunch of war. Now lastly, the United Nations. The United Nations has been involved in all of this from the League of Nations after World War I all the way to the United Nations 1947 partition project with the two-state solution, and all the way to today. So the United Nations is just this conglomerate of all the nations and all the countries. And when you do that, what do you think you have? You have everyone's opinions and mixed bag of opinions. So basically there's a lot of countries that feel that the Palestinians have been mistreated by the Israeli government. And there are some countries that feel that they aren't being mistreated. So there's been a lot of arguing in the United Nations. In my opinion, the United Nations hasn't been very effective in doing much because the United Nations doesn't seem to have influence. They say a lot of things, they do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, countries end up doing what they were already going to do before United Nations meetings because there's so many mixed bag of opinions, and really they just don't come to an agreement on anything. So those were the key players in this conflict. I sure learned a lot when I was researching it, and I definitely am among those who want to see some sort of peace deal, something come out where there's peace in the Middle East. If you think I was wrong in how I was saying things or I misconstrued it, let me know. Put it in the comments. I would love to broaden my perspective some about this issue. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with a friend. I'll see you next time.